Thanks for pressing play. I'm Christopher Lochhead, and this is Follow Your Different. We're a dialogue podcast, the opposite of a standard interview. We aspire to have real conversations with people who honed what makes them unique and turned it into a superpower. We are sponsored by our friends at Oracle NetSuite. Learn how to turbocharge your growth today at netsuite.com/different. All right, we get to hang out with Pat Hiban, a buddy of mine. He's the real estate rock star himself. He's a New York Times best-selling author. And on this episode, you'll learn what it means to grab life big, because Pat sure does. You'll gain some insights into creating horizontal income that directly apply to your own life. We dig into why being a realtor is a great career, why real estate makes a great investment, how Pat charted a second career as a super successful podcaster, author, and now educator, and why, if you go on a trip to Japan with Pat, you better be ready for some big action. Go to lochhead.com and check out the show notes for this episode to get more on Pat's background. And now, hey ho, let's go.
Try to live off of passive income, horizontal lines of income. So first and foremost, I'm an investor, right? And I pay attention to my investments, but that doesn't take much, maybe 20 minutes a day emails, right? And I'm building, and then in my active world, right, where I'm trying to build something new, I have a company called Rebus University where we have online training for real estate agents where we teach them how to sell more houses through video courses. And we sell through funnels. And so we have a big funnel that we're launching this week for that. And then, of course, my men's mastermind company, GoBunbance, that I helped found. And we are writing a book. It's kind of the manifesto of GoBunbance. And we're and I'm involved in the writing process of that. So I would say those are the two things that are keeping me active outside of my investments.
Well, and did I miss it, or did you talk about your podcast?
Oh, yeah. Well, the podcast is a means to an end. Yeah. So the podcast, and by the way, thank you for being patient there, because I had one on that I had to just finish up while you waited here. But yeah, so the podcast, we have Real Estate Rockstars podcast, doing very well. We've had over 3 million downloads and 150,000 or so a month and growing. And that's a means to an end. So I do that, of course. And then we then talk about Rebus University on the podcast. And that's how we collect students for the university, is through the podcast. So yeah, so that comes out. So it
really is the front end of your business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 3-day-a-week thing, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
And do you see you're averaging 150,000 downloads a month?
Yes.
For a real estate podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is unbelievable.
Real estate sales at that. So it's not really about even investing,
Yeah, yeah. And so you're the category king. You pulled the niche down, and you're Moses with the tablets for these folks.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting, right? Because I know that's your gig there, and I saw you speak a couple of times about the category king. And I like that title. There's some other people. There's some other people that in the podcasting space that certainly I compete with. One of them just more or less quit. It seems I'm finding this. I don't know if you're finding this, Chris, but people are quitting, podcasting.
Yeah, they tap out.
And I know Matt Aitchison, I think, just tapped out. Like he was doing it for a while.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
That's a bummer. I'm going to hopefully see him soon.
Yeah, yeah. Someone just told me that he stopped doing them because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Here's the thing: if you don't have, I mean, some of us, number one, get high off of just chatting with people. I know I do. I get energy from meeting people and talking to them. But I think on some level that only lasts long enough where you're either okay with it not making any money, or you determine that here's how I'm going to make money, or you quit. One of those three things. I hope I'm making sense. And I think that a lot of people are starting to figure, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I don't have it figured out how I'm going to make a ton of money from this. So I'm tired of being beholden to do all these interviews all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it so black and white around the economics. And I guess it makes me think, and look, anybody can have whatever motivation they want and have at it. For me, the motivation for doing this was not a financial one. The podcast has had interesting financial outcomes. We have our first sponsor, but it's kept me in the world in a way that I didn't anticipate. But anyway, I guess it's a long rambling way of saying I didn't necessarily have an economic outcome in mind. And strangely enough, it's produced a bunch of economic outcomes. But I still don't worry about it.
Well, that's kind of what happened to me too. I got some advice early on from Ben Keeney. I remember I had this idea of the podcast 3 years ago, and he was like, "Just do it." And I was like, "But how am I going to make money?" And he's like, "Just do it and see what happens." And I think what happens is sometimes if you focus on I'm working, I want to get paid for it. Eventually, things will show up in the universe that will allow you to get paid for it. It may not happen as fast as you want it to, And I think some of these people that are quitting, if they give it more time, they would come up with ways to make it monetize. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've done 700 of them, right? So on some level, my conscious mind is going to be like, unless I'm making money from it, I've scratched that itch.
Right. After 700, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love meeting people, but I got people coming back on for the fifth time. And so I'm like, how you doing? This is Jeff Cohn number 5. But it's fun. But you know what I mean? I think it is an itch. I think a lot of people get into podcasting thinking, this is going to be an instant jackpot, right? All of a sudden, all these people are going to listen to me, and I'm going to be Howard Stern, and I'm going to make all this money, right? This is how my life is going to start, where I'll become famous, and it just doesn't happen. Like they go out there and they get 10 downloads,
Yeah. It's funny. Everything you just said there is not at all what I did, but I can see how a lot of people come at it from that perspective. For me, it was always volleyball after school, right? It's just it's a passion project. It's like playing guitar, going surfing or something.
Yeah. Well, I guess that is true. You know what I mean? And there's people that do that, and I think that was kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's a good point, right? And so I guess you got to ask is how many podcasts out there are passion projects, and how many have an end in mind as to why they're doing that. And it's good to give, and I'm all about giving free information to the universe, right? Because for decades I took from it, right? Every time someone offered some advice, I wrote it down and actually utilized it. So, now it's time. The hero's
Well, also, you filled. Correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but my memory of you doing this and sort of watching you as kind of a enthusiastic outsider. Of course, I'm not in the business, but of course, we know each other, and I think it's really fun that you've done this. And so, the thing, it seems like you filled a real gap in that, when I hear your audience or I hear some of the feedback you get and stuff, there's this theme of, I was sort of on my own, and now I can tune into my Uncle Pat, and he kind of tells me how it is, and I kind of have a roadmap, and I kind of have somebody I can trust, and there was a giant gap of that knowledge, and somebody who's a compelling character, which of course you are, to deliver that knowledge to people in the business. I mean, it seemed like a big hole that you found in this niche.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think what happens, and it was happened in the world, like that's getting disrupted, the business world, especially real estate business in my world, is that all this information is being given out for free. And I think that for years you had to pay for it, right? I mean, you had Nightingale Conant, right? Nightingale Conant was the only way you could really learn and grow from mentors, and that cost money.
Yeah, I mean, what was I don't know, one of those, what was a Zig Ziglar, one of those big, remember they used to come in those big plastic containers that sort of was like a giant book.
Yeah.
Remember that? What do they call those things? There were like 8 tapes on either side or something.
The tape series. I had a whole library of them.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I had a ton of them. I had everything from Zig Ziglar to Deepak Chopra, and
I bought them. I was like one of the ace customers at Nightingale Conant. They would send those books, those magazines. And I'd be like, oh, Les Brown, let me get that one. Oh, Joe Polish or Tony Robbins. I mean, I had all of
those. Were the podcasts of the day, really, right? And I love how Zig Ziglar put it with it. He called it his automobile university, right? Remember, because we didn't have cell phones and shit, right? So if you were a sales guy, you were out on the road. What are you gonna do? You're gonna listen to some weird country station that you don't know, or put in a little Zig.
That's what I did. I used to hike in them. I used to run in them with them. I used to sit in my car with them, drive my car with them. I mean, and now it's all free, right?
Well, no, it's interesting because you and I share this. You were always a guy who learned very powerfully through listening. It's why I always have liked the versions of this medium before it became this medium.
Where do you think it's going to go? Like, I know Gary Vaynerchuk is big on, the future is in audio. A lot of people got it wrong with the video thing. Like, the future is in audio. Like, and being able to talk to your phone is faster than texting, right? So it's all about speed. Being able to listen is faster than having to watch a video.
Yeah. Look, I'm not a big fan of his, but I think maybe I agree with him. No,
Why? Yeah.
Because I think he's the Kim Kardashian of business.
Whoa.
I think, here's how I'd say it. Thinking you've consumed entrepreneurial advice from him is like going to the Olive Garden and thinking you ate Italian food.
I got you.
He's substantive free pretty much. His whole thing is hustle, 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 follow your passion. Well, those are sort of dumb pieces of advice, particularly follow your passion. And look, he's an egomaniac.
Why do you think that appeals to the masses, though?
I think, look, I'm no psychologist. I think we're living at a time, you said it off the top, where a lot of people want to be celebrities. The studies of millennials suggest that the number one thing they want to be is famous. Not accomplished or not even rich, but famous. And so I think a lot of people watch him, young entrepreneurs watch him because they kind of want to be like him. They just wish they were like him, which is why I call him a Kardashian. The Kardashians sell, wouldn't you like to be us, neener nonner? And that's essentially his whole shtick. Don't you wish you were me?
It's interesting. Like I just talked to a guy and he goes, I asked him to do his bio for my show, and he goes, I discovered at a young age I was unemployable. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I just couldn't be an employee, right? I always had to be an entrepreneur, had to, be able to do it my way, right? And I was like, that's fascinating. So that's a nurture thing, right? Like he was just he just saw it as a trait, right? That he is like a race or a sex or whatever. He was just a trait, unemployable. And it makes me think, when you're talking about Gary Vaynerchuk, is he talking to people that are employable, right? That are really employees that don't have the entrepreneur trait, trying to turn them into an identity that doesn't exist, right? It's kind of like the nature nurture thing. What do you think, Chris?
It might be. I mean, on the hustle thing, I just look at that and go, no shit. If you're an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur and you have to be told that you're going to have to work hard, you got a big problem. So that might speak to that. I just think he appeals to, I don't know, he appeals to people who wish they were famous, and so he just talks about himself. I don't know. It's celebrity for the sake of celebrity, which is why I compared him to a Kardashian,
What about Grant Cardone? What do you think of him?
I don't know him enough to have an opinion.
Yeah.
So,
it's the same message, right? It's like, if someone asks you to sharpen a pencil, sharpen 10 pencils, right? It's, you bust your ass, work hard, grind, get up early, be the first one to the office, be the last one to leave. You know what I mean? Don't complain. Just be a machine. And I think it's great fucking advice, right? Don't get me wrong.
There's a lot of that I like.
Great advice.
For sure. Go. I mean, I did all that shit.
Yeah.
I just think if you're an entrepreneur and you need to be told to work hard, you got a problem. But the biggest thing I think is this follow your passion bullshit, because it's not about follow your passion. It's about follow your different. It's about finding a niche that you can make your own. It's about carving your own path. It's about being unique. It's about the exponential power of what makes you different as opposed to the incremental power of what makes you better. Not wanting to compete, to carve out a new territory for yourself, to bring something of meaning and power to the world that the world values, and therefore, you can make money at. All of those things and substantive conversations about those things. I think that's, much more interesting.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. It's cool to think about. I think part of the reason that it's so popular, why Grant and Gary are popular now, massively popular, is because, there's this generation coming up, which is essentially inherently, how do I say this? Lazy entrepreneurs, right? Like.
That sounds very oxymoronic, so to speak.
Yes, it's oxymoronic, but here's the thing, right? It's like, how can I be lazy or be myself and all of a sudden get 100,000 Instagram followers while doing it, like Kim Kardashian, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a lazy entrepreneurship. Is that a real thing? Can it be done? Like, I talk to people all the time that want to go from zero to hero in a year, right? That want to be like, that are asking questions about how to run a company with 1,000 employees when they don't have any employees. Right. I mean, it's like, so where does that come from? That whole zero to the hero thing so fast, to get rich quick. I feel like there's a lot of that, and people listening to Gary Vee and Grant Cardone are tie into that. They're raising their hands saying, yeah, I want that. And of course they want it. Everybody wants it.
Yeah, but let me challenge that a little bit. The longer I've lived, the more I've realized that the journey or the destination is the journey, right? It's the games we get to play. It's the American dream, the pursuit of happiness. It's actually not about getting anywhere. And I know that can sound very easy, to say, but the reality is, as human beings, we are driven to challenge ourselves. It's our DNA. It's why we're here, right? And we are explorers. We are curious. Nobody does anything legendary sitting on the couch, right? And look, I love to sit on the couch, but you have a nice time, but that's not where the source of your life is. And so the reality is, you look at all these incredibly successful people that don't need to work for money, and they're still so driven, and they're doing all this stuff because that's a major source of meaning for us as human beings.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is, these people who sell like, oh yes, well, these 7 steps, and in 1 year you'll be on the mountaintop. Well, you know what you're going to want to do? You're going to want to go climb another mountain.
Yeah.
So the whole thing's a fallacy. The real question is, what is if I could use the term, what is a journey that is worth your talent?
Well, okay, so let's stop right there. What is a journey that is worth your talent? Give me an example of your journey that's worth your talent.
Well, I was somebody who no one was going to bet on my talent. Translation, give me a job and anywhere near the
unemployable. Yeah,
exactly. Not that unemployable. And so the only person who would bet on my potential was me. And so I had to start a company at 18 because it was either that or a manual labor job. And so when you embark on, in my case, being an entrepreneur at a young age, no relationships, no money, no experience, clearly no education. But other than that, I had it all going for me. You're setting forth a challenge for yourself, and we discover who we are, and we become who we are as a direct result of the challenges that we face ourselves with.
Yeah, interesting, right? And then you just play the games that come along, right? And I liken that to me, right? Like, so I sold my real estate team in 2010, went out and wrote my book, over the course of living a journey that accepted my challenge or accepted my talent, or that was worthy of my talent, as you put it, found podcasting. I'm thinking out loud, right? This is very interesting. And then found, Rebus University, found GoBunbance, found different types of investments, and all played the game. It was like, it's kind of like hiking down some trail, and then someone said, "Hey, do you want to play frisbee? You want to play ultimate frisbee?" Right? And playing that game, and then walking on, and someone saying, "Hey, do you want to go swimming, or do you want?" You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
over
do you
life.
want to go backcountry skiing, or do you want to?
Right.
All of it, right? And so, if you look at yourself, you're a great example, Pat. You could have retired a long time ago, and you could be literally sitting on a beach drinking Mai Tais all day, every day. And yet you got all this shit going on, right?
Yeah.
And as my friend David Sachs says, beaches are boring.
I know.
And look, I love the beach. And I live near one, and I don't get me wrong. There's a big place in my life for doing nothing. And I've had more doing nothing in my life now than ever. But that said, we still challenge ourselves. We still take classes. We still do things. We learn new things. You have all these conversations.
You have to. I think it goes back to being unemployable. It's like I live on a beach. Like, I live on an island, a 6 Mile island in South Carolina, and I cannot be on the beach unless, I'm swimming. There's drinking going on. And by that I mean there's a party, right? Like, there's friends and family, and you're drinking, you're day drinking, or you're drinking. You know what I mean? As a sport, or as an event, as a reason, because then it leads to other things, or there's a game of some sort, or there's a game of some sort. You're playing frisbee, or you're playing, whatever. And I think that goes back to being unemployable. We have to create our own, I don't know what you call it, action, right? Productivity, or else we fall asleep. It's like Tim Rhodes says here. Tim says all the time, I'm throttle on, throttle off, right? Yeah. Like I'm on, and I'm on, but you tell me to be still, and I fall asleep. And that's the same thing with me. I've tried meditation 12 times. Every single time I ended up taking a nap. So it's, if I'm on the beach sitting there with a bunch of people, I'll go to sleep, and that's it. It's on or off,
Yeah. Now, I got to ask you, you love real estate. You really do. Or you're an incredible actor, but you seem to truly love real estate. Why do you love real estate so much?
Well, I like the vehicle that it is. You know what I mean? And it's a vehicle, if you buy it right, that basically pays you consistently, that you could rely on, that you could trust. And it's fairly stable as far as, if you get a rental property and you rent it out, your biggest risk is not that it's going to sit empty forever and you're going to lose everything. Your biggest risk is that rents may go down, right? That you'll get $1,200 a month instead of $1,300. That's your biggest risk. So the risk is minimal. And I love it because I can rely on it and it pays me sideways. So I have rental properties, I have apartment buildings, I have, a shopping center, lots of things that pay horizontally. And then I could actually calculate.
So what does pay horizontally mean?
So paying horizontally is the opposite of vertically. So vertically, if you have a job, Chris, and you get a raise of 3%, your income vertically goes up. If you're a salesperson and you sell, 50 cars one year and 55 the next year, your vertical income went up, right? Horizontal income is income that's paying you sideways without work. So a rental property that's paying you $500 a month is horizontally paying you, so you don't have to work. You're just collecting.
Does that mean you can
check.
Be horizontal and the checks still come in?
Exactly. Yeah, okay. That's another way to look at it. Exactly.
that's where my mind goes
and the
to.
checks come in. I like that.
I could be laying down and that shit just rolls in.
Exactly.
And I do love that about real estate. The other thing I love about real estate is, at least the little that I do, nobody in the business calls me. Like the people I invest with, I write them a check. And they don't call me. They don't ask me for advice. I invested in, so-and-so's, he's going to go out and do the apartment building and do all that stuff. And I just did a little chunk of it amongst a little consortium he put together.
We're in a couple together, I think.
I believe we are. Shady pines and uneven windows or something. I don't know. But that's what I love about that. It's like, hey, man, you write a check. And Andrew never calls. He never asked me for advice about what color to paint the place, or he didn't need recommendations on plumbers and shit.
Right.
And that's a nice thing in one's life. So horizontal passive income that doesn't call.
Yeah, it doesn't call. Doesn't require you to be. But the key is it doesn't require you to be beholden to it necessarily, right? Doesn't require management. It does, but you pay somebody to do it.
Pay somebody, right? Yeah. And I also, you guys taught me the power of the magical place to get in life is where your passive income equals your burn rate.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was you or Tim or maybe both of you at the same time, but you guys made that clear to me. And it's so simple, but I had never really thought about it that simply. Yeah.
No, I thank Tim Road for that. I mean, basically it's, you figure out what your, actually, I think Tim got it from Robert Kiyosaki, came from the cash flow game, right? Which is where basically you basically, you pick a job and you pick an income or expenses. You buy a house, you buy a car, you have 3 kids, whatever. And then you got 20 grand a month in expenses. And then you got to buy as many houses or commercial real estate ventures to pay you 20 grand a month. And when that pays you 20 grand a month, you become what we call a GoBunbance, is a 100%er. So if you're a 100%er, 100% of your family expenses is paid by horizontal income. And not only at that time could you really say you're financially free, because that's being paid no matter what.
Yep. And it's such a powerful concept. And as somebody who obviously didn't come up in real estate, while I have a bunch of real estate investments, I don't really think I know what I'm doing. But it seems to me, and I don't know, this is probably the wrong way to say it, but it's what's in my head, so I'll say it, that real estate, and maybe there's others, but is one of those fields where somebody can really come from nothing and become financially independent. And you don't necessarily need to have gone to a super ding-dong college. We know the background of a lot of the realtors that we know and love aren't necessarily huge
right.
academic scholars. And many realtors I know, Tim being one, of course, come from very humble beginnings. And so it seems like one of those professions that without much, if you really go for it and train yourself and position yourself and do all the right things, you can really create a pretty amazing life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. I mean, and I think it goes back to what you said earlier. It's simple concept, right? I mean, and you don't, it's like investing in stocks. I mean, there's so many charts and things to follow and understand, right? It's just, you can get a whole degree in finance and still not understand, the stock market. But real estate, it's like, look, if you get a mortgage payment of $1,100, and your rent is $1,300, then that's good, right? And it's it's not that easy, but it's simple enough, right?
That was math that I understood, Pat.
Exactly.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what is the secret to being a good teacher for people who are either in real estate or getting into real estate?
It's funny. That's a great question. It's basically what I found is, and this is based on the hundreds of comments that we've gotten, like through iTunes or whatever, because people always they'll tell you what they don't like, but they'll also tell you what they like. And generally what I found that people say this is what they like is that no bullshit. Like you can't let agents come on. I can't let agents come on my show and just, talk in cliches, right? Talk in round numbers or talk in numbers they can't back up. So I always ask them what your ECI is instead of GCI. GCI stands for gross commission income. ECI is something I made up called ego commission income, which is their commission income that they're going to tell everybody. And then I say, well, what's your profit margin? And then I calculate their actual net profit right on the show. And people love that.
Catch them.
All the time.
Do you think people would know, like, haven't you listened to Pat's podcast? Like, don't you know what's going to happen?
Yeah, we give them a questionnaire too to get ready.
So you're not doing gotcha journalism here.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We did not hide this in any way from you.
And then a lot of times I have to slow the guests down. I'll go, wait a minute, wait. Say that again. Say it slowly. What does that mean? And I think I got some of that from listening to Howard Stern, to be honest with you. If you ever listen to him, he's like someone is telling a story and he's like, wait a minute, stop right there. So what you're telling me is this girl, and did she have a hairy lip or did she have blonde hair or brunette hair? And how big were her ears? I'm exaggerating, right? But he's like, wait a minute, slow it down. Let me get the whole story. And I'll do that with agents because agents will come on and say, here we did this, we did that. This is how we made money. And I'll be like, wait. Slow it down. So you created this department that is now working really well. How many houses did it sell? How much did you spend on it? Right? How are you involved in it? What lessons have you learned? What mistakes have you know what I mean? Like, stop right there. Yeah. Let's dig deep into it. And people love that. That, and I think so that would answer your question. That's how you become a great teacher is you go, a mentor of mine, Howard Brinton, used to say, you always go 3 deep no matter what, when you ask a question. And 3 deep would be like, well, how and who or what do you use? What tools do you use? And if you ask somebody what tools they use, and the people listening can write them down and buy those tools too,
The other technique I love for that is just, even if you don't have a specific direction you want to steer the conversation, but you're interested in the sort of the rabbit hole we're in here. I like to just say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. And there's nobody who ever says, oh, no, there's nothing more I got on that.
Yeah. I agree.
Now, if I was a new realtor, let's say that I just maybe got my license, what advice would you have for me about how to be a Pat when I grow up?
Hmm. Again, you're going into cliches, but just exactly what we talked about, with the mentality of Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk is you got to work hard, right? That's the first and foremost advice. I met an agent, okay, who was a debt collector. He was making a $42,000 a year salary as a debt collector. He decided to become an agent, right? So he gave his 2 weeks notice, and then the next day he said, I can't wait 2 weeks. I got to get to work. So he quit his job, even though there's 13 days left. And he immediately went from his job as a debt collector with a headset on, calling people who owed a credit card company money, to knocking on a door in a random neighborhood. So here's a guy gets up, gets in his car, and doesn't go to the real estate office, doesn't go to any training, doesn't stop by the office. He goes straight to a door and knocks on it and introduces himself and asks them, do they need an agent? And he said before the day was out, he did that 100 times. And, it was only a matter of a couple of weeks before he had his first listing. And that is amazing to me, that he would just, he would cut through all this clutter and be like, nothing matters until I get a listing or a buyer, and then I'll learn what I need to do with it. But I'm not going to put all that stuff first. I'm not going to go to any training. I'm going to just get the business first and then figure it out. And I just love that.
That's one of the greatest greatest sales stories I've ever heard, Pat. No, that's that's so legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need a lot more of that.
Right. And it works. And that's what I would tell people. They get in their own way. You know what I mean? They're just like, gosh, there's so much to learn. There's so much to do. I said, by the time this guy got a listing, everybody else in his class that took the real estate course with him, there was probably just getting their business cards, or just getting, their paperwork ready or their desk set up or whatever. You know what I mean?
Figuring out where the bathroom was.
Yeah, exactly. I guess one guy called it a junkyard dog, right?
Yeah.
He's like, you gotta be a junkyard dog. You just gotta get out there, and that junkyard dog will get fed the bone quicker than anybody that's trying to come up with strategy and all that, in the back, so.
Well, I love it, Pat. You are just an absolute hoot to hang out with. And I love your success, man. I love that you had this life as a real estate guy and you had all the success you had there, well-earned and well-deserved. And now you're like, you're the man. You're the master sensei.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
It's really cool. You have this whole other life, it's I really admire what you're doing.
I always wanted to do that too, by the way. I always thought in my mind, like, I want to just completely reincarnate. And that's why my wife and I, I was born in Maryland and spent 50 years there. And my wife, and same with my wife, we're both born in Maryland, and we just picked up and we moved to an island in South Carolina 3 years ago. And, I started doing something else besides being in these people's faces all the time that I'd seen my whole life as an agent. And it was just really liberating, I guess, to just completely pick up and just do something completely different. And I'm learning so much, and it requires a lot of patience. Whenever you do anything brand new, it doesn't happen as fast as when you're in your prime in your game that you've done your whole life. You know what I mean? So everything takes longer, but I think it's good for your brain to learn new stuff, and it's good for your soul to just kind of scratch your record a little bit and start over. So
yeah, it sounds like you're having a similar experience. I everything you said I can relate to, because it was the same for me in becoming an author and a podcaster, right? It's like, yeah, you go from this field. In my case, you've worked in for the better part of 30 years and you achieve some level of success, and hopefully you're a little bit respected and whatever, you get to wherever you get to and you feel pretty good about it, and you're good, right? And then for whatever reason, then you go, hey, I'm going to do this whole other thing that I never ever thought I would do. And as a result, I'm going from wherever I was in my old thing to like the absolute bottom in the new thing.
Right. Yeah. What am I thinking? Right.
It's humbling. It's like, my newest physical thing for the last, I don't know, maybe year or so has been Pilates. And it's like you go and try to do Pilates. Like it's hard.
Yeah.
And so it's good to go do stuff you suck at and you got to start over at, right?
Right. No, I agree.
All right, Pat, anything else before we wrap?
No, I think that's it, Chris, man. I really appreciate you having me on. And, I'm sure you'll put my show notes. I'll if I can do a plug for a funnel that I'm running.
Absolutely.
I have, so you guys may or may not have seen the book. It's called 6 Steps to 7 Figures.
That book was a game changer, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was glad I did it, and it turned out really well, and it still sells very well. And so I'm giving this out for free now. All you got to do is go to free6stepsbook.com. That's free 6 SIX steps book BOOK.com, free6stepsbook.com, and pick up a free copy. I will pay for it for you, so you can get a free copy of this book. Just go there.
That's amazing. We'll have that in the show notes, of course. Very cool, Pat. It's great hanging out with you, man. And I can't wait till I see you in person. Have a fantastic time in Japan. And kiss Tim Road. Kiss Tim Road for me, would you?
I will. And hopefully I'll make it out that way, and 3 of us could get together in the near future.
Oh, my God. I would love that.
All right, boss.
Let me know when you're coming. Have fun.
All right, Chris. I'll see you.
Bye-bye. Whew. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Pat as much as I did. If you think this conversation is worth sharing, why not email it to somebody right now from your smartphone or your tablet or your computer or whatever other device you may be consuming Follow Your Different on, and send it to somebody in your life who you think might benefit from this episode. Also, make no mistake, your social media shares make a giant difference to me personally and to if you're going to have a podcast, you should learn how to talk, and to the success of Follow Your Different. So please share this episode on social media. Now, if you would like to send me a question to be answered on a future episode, send an email to blackhole@lochhead.com. You can follow me on Twitter at lochhead, LOCHHEAD. And if you go to our website, lochhead.com, which is most excellent, why not subscribe to our newsletter? And that way we will keep you up to date with what's going on. Now, is it grow time in your business? I bet it is. Why not check out netsuite.com/different? And there you will be able to set yourself up for a free growth review with an expert in your industry. Now, why would you want to do that? Not that long ago, an outfit called SL Associates did a report of NetSuite customers, and they found stunning improvements in key metrics that matter after switching to NetSuite's cloud-based business management software. Incredible results like a 10% increase in revenue. Who doesn't want that? When asked, founders, CEOs, board members, heads of sales, or really any kind of business leader, hey, would you like a 10% increase in revenue from where you are now? The answer is always yes. An 80% increase in business insights, a 5% increase in growth margins. So it's time. It's time to get growing. Go to netsuite.com/different today. All right. We would like to thank the Real Estate Rockstar podcast with our friend and guest today, Pat Hiban. Check it out wherever you consume legendary podcasts. Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different, the #1 bestseller from Heather Clancy and myself. John's Crazy Socks, the official sock supplier to this podcast. Check them out at johnscrazysocks.com. And hey, are you feeling a little overwhelmed? Is it time for some help? Go to bottleneck.online, and you can learn all about how Bottleneck virtual assistants can save your hiney and allow you to focus on more of what matters. Also, speaking about things that matter, check out growwire.com. This is the new place in cyberspace for legendary entrepreneurs who want to grow their business. Myself and Heather are blogging there. many other smart people. There's awesome content. There's a GrowWire podcast, which I was stoked to be the first guest on, and I'm re-guesting, if re-guesting is a word. So check out growwire.com and the amazing people at kiva.org. Micro loans that make a difference in the developing world. Check out kiva.org. Now, I must remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Lochhead Oddcast Network, and we would love it if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain perturbed. We must warn you that clearly this oddcast is produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Teach entrepreneurship. When opportunity knocks, open the door. Don't forget Johnny Cash was right. There's no stopping the cretins from hopping. Thank you, Dandy Candy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go to Hugh Martin of Verizon Wireless. Sorry, Huey, we just ran out of time for you. Thank you so much for investing part of your life with me. Stay legendary, my friends, and don't forget, follow your different.